The movie begins by introducing Paul, a young man facing the typical challenges of his mid-20s. In search of a fresh start, Paul finds himself racing against time to land a job, and that morning was no exception. He was on his way to an interview at a charming cafe in the heart of London. Pressured by time and anxiety, he found himself stuck in a long line, where a stranger, claiming to be a former teacher, approached him with familiarity. Paul, confused, had no memory of the man, who quickly said goodbye and disappeared into the crowd. The line for the interview kept growing, and, in an unexpected turn of events, a mischievous dog grabbed Paul's scarf, adding more chaos to his already complicated day. After recovering his scarf, Paul noticed a poster advertising vacancies at the very same location. Driven by his urgent need for work, he entered the establishment, which looked more like a warehouse under renovation than an actual office. Inside, Paul met Sophie, another candidate, and soon both were greeted by Dennis, the manager, and his wife, Rosie, the receptionist. Curiously, Dennis called Paul by name, even though he had never applied for the position or left his details. The confusion deepened when, upon asking about the company's activities, Dennis vaguely replied that they did a little bit of everything. In the interview room, Paul met the team. Humphrey, the company's founder, explained the disorganized appearance of the place by mentioning a recent reconstruction following a fire. During the interview, Paul was asked to share his life story, but his words seemed dull until he became distracted by a stain on the wall that, to his eyes, resembled the city of London. This observation triggered an intriguing silence among those present, and Dennis abruptly ended the interview, thanking Paul and showing him out. Back at home, Paul found his roommate packing his things, ready to move back to his parents' house because he could no longer afford the rent. This meant Paul would now have to take on the full cost of the apartment. Amid this whirlwind of events, an unexpected letter arrived, announcing his acceptance at the mysterious company. The next day, filled with a mix of anticipation and uncertainty, Paul prepared for his first day on the job. As he stepped through the company's front door, Paul was greeted by Rosie, the cheerful receptionist, who quickly called Dennis to give Paul a tour of the facility and help him get acquainted with his new work environment. Hello, my dear friends. This is the summary of the movie, The Portable Door. I hope you're enjoying it. Comment, I'm enjoying it, so we know you've been paying attention to every detail of the video. Now, let's continue. During the tour, Paul noticed several peculiarities that defined the company's culture, from a vintage stapler, mysteriously off-limits, to strict rules like the prohibition of overtime, which required all employees to leave the office promptly at the end of the workday. He discovered that he would be sharing his workspace with Sophie, who confessed that she couldn't stand the smell of coffee, even though Paul enjoyed sipping his drink while working. Paul was startled when he spotted a creature that looked like a baby dragon. Shortly after, Rosie walked into the room with some documents, casually mentioning the baby dragon. Confused, Paul chose not to comment, thinking he might be hallucinating. As the routine unfolded, Paul and Sophie were assigned the task of marking specific areas on a map. During their lunch break, Sophie, surprisingly, expressed a desire to have coffee, a change in attitude that puzzled Paul. Before they could leave for lunch, Judy interrupted with a new task for Sophie and invited Paul to tag along to learn more about the process. They went to a location where a tube emerged from a duct containing critical information for the mission. Judy instructed Sophie to observe a woman in the park who was reading a book. The task was to signal when the woman reached a specific passage. While Judy discreetly positioned herself, a man approached and sat near a fountain. Sophie, keeping her eyes on the book, waited patiently until the key words appeared and quickly gave the signal. In the next moment, the man accidentally fell into the fountain, and the woman immediately ran to help him. This incident set the stage for an encounter that could blossom into a relationship, as Judy revealed that the woman's parents had hired the company to orchestrate this exact moment. Back at the office, while Paul was examining the map, he noticed energy emanating from his hands. Intrigued, Humphrey paid him a visit and instructed him to place his hand over the map without touching it. Focused, Paul observed a faint electric arc coming from his finger. Humphrey then took him to his office and revealed the company's ambitious plans to influence people's minds worldwide through carefully orchestrated events that seemed like mere coincidences, but were meticulously planned by the organization. Drawn into the company's mysterious project, Paul was tasked with finding a peculiar artifact known as the Portable Door, which had the strange ability to disguise itself. Humphrey instructed him to keep the search a secret, and Paul immediately began scouring every corner of the office in search of the enigmatic door. During his search, Paul was approached by Ninka, who showed visible unease. Despite the pressure, he kept his word and revealed nothing about his secret mission. Ninka voiced her concern about how much trust Humphrey seemed to place in Paul, a mere intern, which only fueled suspicions among the staff. This tension escalated later that night when, in a disturbing dream, Paul was confronted by Casimir. Using an illusion that made Paul's ears grow, Casimir pressured him until he finally confessed to the search for the portable door. The next day, a bizarre scene unfolded at the office. Rosie was inexplicably licking an old stapler. Meanwhile, Paul was following clues that led him to the Bank of the Dead, a sign pointing to the dark basement. As he descended the stairs, he found walls covered in enigmatic drawings, and at the end, a sealed room with a warning sign. Curious, Paul opened the door, only to be startled and thrown out by Dennis, who mocked his attempt to find the portable door. Meanwhile, Judy confided in Sophie that the company's real owner, along with Arthur Dennis's father, had mysteriously disappeared. Judy also voiced her curiosity about Humphrey and Dennis's intentions and why they had hired Paul. After a frustrating day of fruitless searches, Paul was ready to head home when he overheard an argument between Sophie and Dennis. Sophie, visibly upset, expressed her desire to quit, feeling manipulated and noticing changes in her tastes and dislikes. However, Dennis dismissed her resignation, reminding her of a contract she had already signed. As they left the office, Paul invited Sophie to a nearby bar to unwind. Over beers, Sophie confessed her suspicions to Paul. Something was deeply wrong with the company. Paul took in Sophie's revelations. Despite his growing doubts about Humphrey's integrity and Sophie's warnings, he chose to keep his discoveries to himself and continued to act indifferent to her concerns. The following day, Paul's curiosity led him back to Dennis's office, where he discovered a hidden door. Inside the secret room, he found a collection of ancient and enchanted objects. One of these objects was the old stapler, which, to his surprise, turned out to be a goblin. The goblin gestured to guide Paul, who, after following the directions, finally stumbled upon the mysterious portable door. The door he had been searching for was cleverly disguised within Dennis's secret room. As he stepped through it, the door immediately transformed into a towel. Paul unexpectedly emerged in Humphrey's room, just as Humphrey and Dennis were presenting a project to clients. The project involved manipulating young people's desires, making them like things they had previously disliked, all for commercial purposes. Eavesdropping, Paul discovered that his conversations with Sophie had been monitored via a hidden microphone in his badge. Realizing the exit was locked and he had no other option, Paul used the inscription on the towel, saying, "Knock, knock," and the name of the desired location to escape. Paul reappeared at the supermarket and, without wasting time, returned to the office to warn Sophie. He discarded his badge and revealed Humphrey's surveillance. Paul also shared the secret of the portable door with Sophie, who was utterly fascinated. When attempting to return to the supermarket using the door, Paul made a mistake by forgetting to name the destination before opening it. As a result, he found himself lost in a dark room filled with mysterious doors and unfamiliar voices. After fixing the mistake, Paul and Sophie used the portable door to travel to various places around the world, enjoying incredible adventures. However, upon their return, they found Dennis waiting for them, already aware of their discovery. He noticed the beach sand on their shoes and deduced that they had found the door. Dennis warned them to hand the door over to Humphrey immediately, hinting that unforeseen consequences could arise if they failed to comply. Upon uncovering the sinister truth behind the company's operations, Paul became even more cautious and distrustful. Determined to act, he planned a clandestine nighttime visit to the office to destroy the contract that had trapped Sophie. Once the workday ended and the lights were turned off, leaving the building in silence, Paul and Sophie used the mysterious portable door to enter Humphrey's office. However, to their surprise, they ended up in the printing room, shrouded in darkness. There, Paul came across the stapler he had previously discovered in the basement, further piquing his curiosity. Suddenly, one of the printers sprang to life on its own and began printing a sheet detailing Operation Fine Print. The document echoed Sophie's earlier findings, reinforcing the severity of the situation. As they absorbed the information, strange and unsettling sounds began to echo through the room, heightening the tension in the air. Driven by urgency, Paul tried using the portable door again to enter Humphrey's office directly. But in an unexpected twist, the door transported them to a different room, filled with manholes labeled with the names of various cities. On the floor, an ominous inscription read, "Bank of the Dead," confirming their suspicions. The signed contracts surrendered the souls of the signatories to the Bank of the Dead, perpetuating its control over their desires and wills. Before they could fully grasp this revelation, glowing eyes emerged from the shadows, and strange creatures began to chase them through this eerie setting. Fortunately, they managed to escape these mysterious beings, only to be confronted by Dennis, who reprimanded them for breaking into the office after hours. It was then that an even stranger truth came to light. Dennis and some other employees were, in fact, goblins in disguise, whose lack of respect for Humphrey's power as a wizard sparked a heated argument. At the height of the conflict, Humphrey, frustrated, turned 3 goblins into simple office supplies, demonstrating his magical power and authority. Taking advantage of the distraction, Paul and Sophie tried to escape using the portable door, but Humphrey, anticipating their moves, managed to capture the door, which turned into a towel when closed. Locked in a room full of doors that always led them back to the same place, Paul and Sophie found themselves in a desperate situation. That was when they encountered John Wells, Humphrey's father, who was also trapped there due to his son's schemes. John shared a crucial piece of information. He possessed Humphrey's soul contract and planned to deliver it to the Bank of the Dead, which could put an end to his son's manipulative control. The situation in the room of doors was intense, with John Wells imprisoned, allowing Humphrey to continue his manipulative project called Operation Fine Print. However, through a joint effort and Paul's knack for finding exits, they finally managed to escape the enigmatic room. Upon returning to the office, Rosie's surprise was evident when she saw John. She immediately asked for her husband to be called. Without wasting any time, Paul, Sophie, and John headed to the basement, determined to deliver Humphrey's soul contract to the Bank of the Dead. Meanwhile, Dennis and the goblins were busy sending other contracts to the Bank of the Dead using the portable door, which opened above an inscription on the floor. At that moment, Humphrey appeared. Aware of his father's presence, Humphrey didn't hesitate and initiated a direct confrontation with John. As the fight between father and son escalated, Paul and Sophie tried to get past the goblins blocking the way, but there were too many to overcome. In a desperate move, Sophie used her telepathic powers to call the authorities. Meanwhile, a mistake on John's part allowed Humphrey to knock him down, closing the portable door, which once again turned into a towel. Paul, who was about to deliver the contract to the Bank of the Dead, was also attacked by Humphrey. In response, Humphrey launched a magical attack against Sophie. With her last ounce of strength, Sophie instructed Paul that he needed to create a new path for the portable door. Standing over the inscription, Bank of the Dead, Paul used his magical power to open a new portal directly to the bank. With the newly created door, Paul advanced and delivered Humphrey's contract, but imposed one condition. He demanded Sophie's soul contract in return to free her from oppressive control. With the agreement fulfilled, John finally managed to control his son, stripping him of his magical powers. As a result, Humphrey was confined to the room of doors, ensuring he could no longer cause harm. Victorious, Paul, Sophie, and John watched as Humphrey was finally defeated. John, now in control, permanently deactivated the portable door, transforming it into a harmless towel to ensure it could no longer be used for evil purposes. Back in the normal world, Paul successfully recovered and freed Sophie's contract, and so the movie ends. If you enjoyed this film, I recommend watching this other one as well. I guarantee you'll love it. See you there.